afternoon and welcome to the studio here at European Utility Week. With me this afternoon I have Fred Gastaldo, who is the CEO of Tiko. Fred, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I was wondering if you could perhaps elaborate a little bit on why customer engagement is so very important.
Well, you see, we're on the way to an energy transition. So people have to change their habits. They have to change the ways they deal with energy, the ways they do all the activities of our lives, actually. There are two ways you can address this kind of changes. One is top-down, and some form of government or authority is going to tell us, do this, do that, stop using oil, stop using gas, you have to. And that's one way to make this transition happen. The other way is rather the grassroots way. And we believe that it's going to be more powerful, it's going to be faster, it's also going to be more efficient if it comes in a bottom-up fashion, where you have markets, consumers, and people who want to embrace this energy transition. And this is why, in a word, customer engagement is so central to what we're doing.
I suppose if your transition is being driven by the people that are going to be part of it, it also ensures that it'll have a lot more longevity.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do not believe that people want to be forced into such a thing as the energy transition. We believe that if this is going to stay, and we believe it has to be here to stay, then yes, it must come from the consumer, it must come from the user. And we think it's possible. It's just a matter of developing the technologies, giving those consumers the opportunity to see the advantages for themselves of going down that path, and themselves for their community. And actually we found a much bigger resonance by customers than we would have thought in the beginning. You always believe that people are just like this homo economicus. That we're not. That definitely we're not. And so, of course, it's a part of life, and of course, those things have to have a payback, or they must make some sense economically. But people make lots of decisions which are not driven purely by financials, and especially in that field, you find that many people who you would not think are sensitive to greenwashing would nevertheless engage and follow paths whereby they go along or even are at the front edge of the energy transition.
Now, you have very specific ideas around the need for community building, e-charging. Please explain.
Well, actually we believe that something is going to happen in the field of energy that happened in the field of food or in the industry of food something like 10, 20 years ago. 20 years ago you started to have like the green and organic, bio in some countries. You started to have this kind of labels, and people started to engage into that. And when you look at what's been happening, then it moved along the lines of being always more local. So now you don't want your food only to be organic, but you also want it to come from these farmers that you know, and he's coming from your local community, and the food is local, and you know that you're having those short circuit in production. We believe that exactly the same trends are at work in the energy world. And energy, which was considered, or is very often still considered to be the ultimate commodity, is actually not a commodity at all. And that you want your energy to be organic, or in our case, green and coming from PV, or coming from wind energy, or any form of renewable energy, but you also want it to be local. You want it to come from this rooftop of your neighbors that you know. You want it to be produced over the football stadium of your city, and that's the energy you want to use, and you want also to sell your own energy to your neighbors and to your community. And we think that that is a way that people are going to consider energy in the future, and anyone who enables that change, any platforms that gives them the opportunity to do that, any energy retailer who embraces that, is going to have much more customers at the end of the day, and much more satisfied customers, also sticky customers. Lots of energy retailers complain about fickleness of their customer base. But yes, if the only thing you have to tell them it's so many cents per kilowatt hours, why should I stay with you if another guy is giving me cheaper kilowatt hours? If now the energy that you distribute is no longer anonymous, but is locally produced, locally consumed, and you can create a sense of belonging, then definitely customers are just not going to go to the next cheapest offer. So that's why we think it's so central, and we think that electromobility is going to trigger that even more. It's going to bring those needs one step further, because you see, you have been using in your car gasoline, and it became green, and now you see in German cities diesel is going to be forbidden, or is forbidden already in a number of German cities. So now we're all going to buy those fancy electric cars. How do you think you're going to react if you buy one of those fancy electric cars and then suddenly your electricity comes from the next dirty coal power plant? You're probably not going to be excited.
A little bit of a contradiction, right?
Yes, there is a contradiction, intrinsic. And so we think that the move to electromobility is just going to cascade and is going to accelerate this move, which is happening already dramatically. So that's why we think communities and electromobility are going to come together very nicely.
Well, during the keynote at European Utility Week today, they've been talking very much around the electrification of our world.
Yes.
So
we believe into that. It's a necessity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's we have no choice. If we want the CO2 and the carbon dioxide emissions to be reduced to zero, which is obviously what we have to do if we don't want to cook in our own planet, then we have to electrify. There is no way out.
Yeah.
And this is actually, when you think at it, this is an incredible transformation that we're ahead of. And we have to do that in a matter of 1 or 2 generations. We identified the problem really only a couple generations ago. And for the human psyche, a couple generations is nothing.
Yeah.
We're slow learners. And so realizing some things that my parents who are in their 80s now barely understand or fathom what is it that's acting now, and my grandchildren, it's going to be too late if we have not done anything, and this is going incredibly fast. And so yes, we have to electrify the entire system. 2/3 of the energy consumption today is out of electrification. So essentially you have to bring 2/3 of that energy consumption in the electric grid. If you do that, you would have to rebuild the grid, which in itself would be self-defeating, because to do that you would have to engage so much energy and systems that you would be producing again carbon dioxide. So you have to improve massively efficiency, and you have to move the entire system to the grid. That's where we think our technology, which brings flexibility to the network, which allows the loads to be shifted, if only by a few minutes or a few dozen minutes, but that's already critical, that's enough to make sure that you don't have to triple the size of the local grids and of the mains, of the transmission grids. And so that's why we believe that first it's possible, but yes, you have to bring the technologies here and now, and not wait for 20 years until everything is electrified, everything is digitalized before you start acting. You have to do things now, and it's possible.
So my last question is, what do you see as the single biggest opportunity that is facing the sector at the moment?
Actually, I've mentioned it. This is the single biggest opportunity. Yeah. I mean, if the sector can make sure that, again, we're not going to boil and cook and be that frog, slowly cooked, not realizing it. If the sector can do that, I think that's the biggest opportunity we have. It has ahead of it, and I think it's possible too.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity.
from European Utility Week. Thanks so much for watching.